Brilliant. So, hi everyone. We're here today with Emily from Our Minds Work. One of the things we're going to be talking about today is helping support organisations to be more mentally well. Obviously, the mental health crisis stemming from COVID-19 is a serious one and one that will be with us for some time to come. So we've partnered with Emily and her team to allow us to support more organisations to be more mentally well. And today we're going to talk to you guys a little bit about some of the trends and themes that Emily's seeing in workplaces around stress and mental health. So Emily, just thinking about some of the things we've talked about recently, from your experience as a mental health practitioner, what are some of the changes that you think are needed in workplaces to help them be more mentally well?
Do you know, it's a really interesting question because if we were sat here 6 years ago, Michaela, we wouldn't have even been having this conversation. So workplace mental health is a very, very new topic still. It only really kind of exploded about coming up to 5 years ago. And I was very luckily involved with a program through National Mind called the Blue Light Program, at the forefront of the explosion of what we can do in the workplace to create mentally healthy workplaces. So things have changed, as you can imagine, with any new movement, and it's definitely been a movement. With any new field, it develops as it goes. And even though the aim has always been to create workplaces that are mentally healthy so that people can thrive, they can be mentally and physically well, they can enjoy good work, and the economy can benefit from that as well. It's taken us a long time to figure out how we actually do that. So these have been the changes, and what has been quite interesting is as the movement started, it started with we just need to talk about mental health. So the idea behind that was to reduce stigma and raise awareness. We just needed to talk about it. There was a bit of an issue for this kind of part of the movement for me was people weren't educated enough around mental health to really have good conversations on this topic. So education around mental health was non-existent 4-5 years ago, unless you were a health and social care mental health professional. Only those people in those fields would have been on any form of training. So the conversation was being started around mental health without no education behind it. And when we don't have education on the mental health topic, we talk from our own experiences, which is completely fine, but we also talk from a perspective of stereotypes as well. So there was a bit of a gap there. There was something missing, and for us that was the education piece. Then the education piece started to kick in a little bit later, and we saw initiatives like mental health awareness training. We saw mental health first aid being delivered, and brilliant as an education piece. This was definitely what we needed. We needed more people to understand mental health from a scientific background, from a factual background, as well as marrying that with our lived experiences. But during all of this time, we've always had one constant, that HR professionals in workplaces were basically nominated to be the people to change these cultures, to educate people, to run these initiatives, to create a mentally healthy workplace. And there was a bit of a problem with that, was HR professionals are not mental health professionals. They don't have the knowledge, background, skills, or education to do what was really expected of them. So it was great that we could train people to be mental health first aiders. For me, mental health first aid is a huge education piece on understanding more about mental health for yourself. Great that we could raise awareness like that. but that was never going to change the culture, because culture change is massive. It is complex. It needs a framework. It needs a strategy, and it needs to understand where are we now as a workplace and what are we trying to achieve. So if you're thinking about it in those much broader terms, we've never had what we've needed to get there.
Yeah.
So our Minds Work created a culture change program, which fits around a framework, and it targets initiatives to everybody from CEO level to frontline staff. That's with education, mental health advocates in place, working with occupational health and safety, and bringing it all together so that we can begin to change the culture there. But
it's such a good point, because we've talked about before, haven't we, where when it's given, mental health is given the responsibility to, say, HR or to one particular department within an organization, managers and leaders are almost abdicating then the responsibility for their team and their own mental health as well. So have you seen in organizations any particular issues that come from that then, with managers that just aren't as confident around speaking to their team about mental health, or also feeling like they can be open and honest about their own mental health as well?
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. It actually starts to create more barriers for people, because we're constantly pushing back the responsibility onto other people. We saw that quite early on with the responsibility, and probably still now, actually, just not as much. The responsibility being pushed from it between HR and health and safety. Whose responsibility is this to do this? And the way our minds work, think it's that it's everybody's responsibility, even down to the employees. They have a responsibility to also look after their own mental health, which plays a huge part in a mentally healthy workplace. The CEO has the responsibility of leading those values forward, so that it becomes part of your genetic makeup as a company, that everything that you do is about keeping people physically and mentally well. So yeah, we've seen a lot of that, and it does create those further barriers. And this is one of the reasons why we designed the Workplace Mental Health Leadership Apprenticeship, was because we're putting all these expectations onto people who don't have the skills or knowledge of how to do what they're being asked to do. So we realized that quite quickly, I suppose, in the space of the growth of the field over the past 5 years. And that was probably one of the biggest reasons why we created this apprenticeship, to say to these leaders, senior leaders, department leaders, HR, health and safety, if this is what you're expected to do, and to be fair, we should be expecting every leader and manager to be doing what they can to create a mentally healthy workplace, then this is how you do it. So that's what the apprenticeship does. It provides the tools, the knowledge, the strategy, in understanding the initiatives and what's going to work best for their company, to create what we would call an inspiring culture.
So I'm interested in that, because we've talked about a thriving work culture, haven't we? And obviously there was the Thrive at Work report, which has been well documented and has got some really interesting research. So can you kind of describe, what does a thriving work culture, inspiring culture, what does that feel like for those employees and leaders that are in that business?
Yeah, definitely. And we see this again as a journey. We talk a lot about the journey when it comes to culture change. And one of the first things to recognize really in that journey is, where are you as an organization? And with we have a progression model. We designed a progression model to show the framework of things that companies need to be implementing or have in place to become an inspiring culture. So we have a couple of stages. So if I read through the stages, you can start to build this picture of what a mentally healthy workplace looks like, that inspires that healthy culture. So one of the first things that we think about when we're asked to go and work with an organization to help them with this culture change is we need to think about what are the safety nets that you have in place. This was another concern of mine when the movement started and we started just the let's talk about mental health, let's raise awareness. Brilliant, we do need to do those things, but the things that need to happen first, if we raise awareness around mental health, and we see this within our country at the moment, the more awareness we raise and the more stigma we decrease, the more people come forward looking for treatment and support. If that treatment and support isn't there, it's not accessible, there's waiting times, you can't get in to see your doctor, then this is actually more harmful to those people who are trying to get onto the road of recovery.
Yeah.
So we look at that in the workplace straight off the bat, and actually we won't go into a workplace and deliver work if they don't have access to an EAP that we can refer people onto, occupational health being fully embedded into the organisation, you know, so that they do have early intervention and preventative measures in place as well that we can tap into. So that safety net really is our first step towards implementing culture change. You've got to have the protection and the therapy and treatments in place for people to access, and quickly as well.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, because I read some research, I think it was Harvard Business Review did some recent research, and I think they say now that 1 in 4 adults experience mental health illness each year, which is just phenomenal amount of people, isn't it? So if those organizations don't have a clear strategy in place, like you say, the basics of the safety nets, then people won't feel like they can be their true authentic selves at work and have that transparency and open conversation around mental health. I think that's what really helps reduce the stigma, isn't it? That people feel that they can, you know, show up as their true selves. And if we are truly authentic, then that leads to, you know, much more productivity, retention of employees, and general well-being at work. So when you have seen that successfully happen with an organization, is there any other things that inspiring culture, you know, just so many descriptions or things that companies have in place that really help support people?
I think, you know, really robust EAP and occupational health are really key elements to it, because, you know, your managers, mental health advocates, mental health first aiders, there is nobody within that employment that is a mental health professional or a medical professional who is able to support somebody into recovery. So we have to have that referral process into the medical professionals that can help. You know, relying on people just to go to the GP, it's too much of a barrier for people. It's a really difficult first step to take into recovery. So we've got to make sure that we broaden out those referral routes for people, definitely. What's quite interesting about that statistic that you've just thrown out there, the 1 in 4, Michaela, is obviously with COVID-19, we're probably going to see that increase. Yeah. What is even more interesting is that 1 in 4 statistic was first surveyed in 1992. I bet you can't remember 1992.
I can't. It's just good face cream.
It was a long time ago.
It was. And it's never been surveyed since.
Sorry?
And it hasn't ever been surveyed since. Wow.
Yeah,
That's phenomenal.
It's been surveyed, and we keep hearing that it's the same statistic. Now, whether you believe that or not is a different matter. You can probably get what I believe when it comes to that.
But like you say, the post-COVID thing, the situation's only going to get worse for people and for organisations, isn't it? So, you know, why is it now so important to launch a leadership programme like this, do you think?
Yeah. Definitely, without a doubt. So just going back to the progression model, the second thing that we look at is what's the strategy and what are the policies and procedures that are going to support this strategy? Because one of the biggest shocks, and it still shocks me today, is that a significant amount of companies that we speak to or have ran polls during events full of HR people, and the question is, do you have a stress management policy and procedure in place, and are you using stress risk assessments? And the majority of people will say no, I don't know. And this is HSE legislation that's been around since 1999. So again, there are no experts. There are currently no experts in a workplace who know how to do what we know how to do as the experts. So that's why the apprenticeship is there, to create those experts who are then able to implement all of these things. So the strategies and policies is really, really important that those are in place before you start looking at training people, because part of your training is going to be focused on what are your policies and procedures, what's the legislation you should be following, where do we send people and refer people on if we need to. And if you don't have those in place and you start raising awareness and educating people, you're creating bigger problems.
Yeah, and it shouldn't only be that it has to get to the point where you're dealing with a serious mental health illness situation for this to be a priority for organizations. Everyone has mental health, and I think that's one of the other stigma issues, isn't it, that people almost think that you need to be ill for action to be taken, when really we should all be taking responsibility for our own mental health, but also for the protection of those that are around us, that we have a duty of care over as leaders in organizations as well. And when you think about that kind of progression model, have you got any examples of organizations that are doing a really great job with their EAP and their other systems and processes they have in place?
Yeah, loads of them.
Okay, that's good.
Usually the ones that we're working with, because the reason why we're working with them is because they're committed to doing this, and they have those in place, or they want to work towards having that in place. One off the top of my head that a lot of people will probably have heard of, Northumbrian Water. We've been working with them for 2 years plus now, and the dedication from the senior leadership team to invest in people whose specific role is to do this. So instead of it just being in HR or health and safety, they have well-being kind of leads sit within HR, but they work together with health and safety. They implement a significant amount of support for people. The EAP is brilliant. They not only provide treatments and support and advice and guidance for employees, but they also provide like a management support helpline as well. So if a manager is going through a difficult situation with an employee, they can utilize advice and guidance there. They've been really committed to training over 300 of their managers, including senior managers, in accredited training as well, that we've been delivering with them. So they do a significant amount. They deliver resilience training. They have mental health first aiders in place, where we've implemented our blueprint to support the wider structure and procedures to keep people safe when using the mental health first aid system. They really, really have been an organisation that are creating a mentally healthy and inspiring culture. But it's a journey, isn't it? And nothing happens overnight.
No, definitely.
Trying to change the culture of a workplace like this, it can take years.
Yeah. No, it sounds very positive. And as long as people are taking good, positive steps in the right direction, at least then people will feel that they are starting to see the change in their organisation and they can be part of it as well. So just before we finish, Emily, is there anything else that you want to just reference before we close out our conversation today?
I don't think so. I think we've talked about a lot there and definitely covered the points that we wanted to. And I think what has been amazing for us to be working with the Opportunity Group in this partnership to deliver this apprenticeship is one of the things that we do pride ourselves as being an expert in our field. Because right now in the field of workplace mental health, there are a lot of noise. And people who are out there.
It's increasing as well now, isn't it, during COVID? There's webinars everywhere, there's training being delivered. I have seen
there's a lot of noise and an increase in people, no mental health background, spend 5 days on a mental health first aid trainer course, and then all of a sudden, they're running their own company and with no background in mental health to start off with. So it's become a bit of a dangerous place. So we pride ourselves on being the experts in what we do, and have got a lot of experience and qualifications to back that up. And I think we needed to find the right organisation to help us to achieve our goal of creating these mentally healthy workplaces. And working with the Opportunity Group, obviously you guys are the same as us. You pride yourselves in being expert in what you do and amazing quality of work that you do. So I think together we're really gonna achieve the goals of starting to create these mentally healthy workplaces. Because once we train one leader in one department, even if we train 20 leaders in 20 departments in 20 different organizations, the synergy from that starts to spill over. And that's what we need. We need that overspill, but we need to target the right people. Mental health first aid training isn't going to change the culture of your workplace. It's the leaders that need to do that, and they need the qualification and experience and knowledge and guidance on how to do that through the apprenticeship. So really looking forward to us delivering our first apprenticeships with you.
Absolutely, and as you say, hopefully through things like the apprenticeship levy, we can therefore reach more people with this mission as well, because we can do it in a really cost-effective way for those who particularly don't have a budget. Now post-COVID, we're seeing obviously a lot of strain on training budgets and things. So really exciting. Well, really good to speak to you. So thank you.
You too, Michaela. Thanks very much.
Bye.